Digital threats evolve rapidly, making it difficult for security teams to keep pace. Tyne's security automation and orchestration is different from traditional SOAR. It allows teams to move faster and make better decisions in real time. With Tyne's, analysts and engineers have everything they need to automate the processes they're closest to, regardless of complexity. Built by security practitioners for security practitioners, Tynes powers mission-critical security workflows at McKesson, Canva, and Mars. Start building for free at securityweekly.com/Tynes. If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The 2024 Level Blue Futures Report sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business contexts that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today. Visit securityweekly.com/levelblue. Cybersecurity simplified. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. For our second interview in this episode, Justin Beals joins us today to talk about how the top-down approach isn't really working for cybersecurity or compliance. Justin, with a background in AI, cybersecurity, and governance, founded StrikeGraph to simplify cybersecurity audits and certifications. He likes making arcane cybersecurity standards plain and simple to achieve. Welcome to the show, Justin.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Adrian and Katie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a topic that I have, or a conversation that I have often. I do think we're kind of at an inflection point, partially because of ransomware, and partially because we do have so many standards now, and we kind of have reached this point of maturity. We can start asking ourselves, does a pen test really do what I need? Is this control? Is our phishing test really working? Are they really making our employee? Like, there's all these different things we can start questioning now. And, especially at a high level, I think it's important to tackle some of that stuff, especially as we see, like, I spend a lot of my time hanging out with CISOs and talking to CISOs, and they're not really happy or satisfied with how things are going. They're under the gun, for a lot of different reasons, legally liable for certain things. So I think everybody's kind of looking for a more sane, better approach to doing things. So maybe start us off there, because you've been around for a while as well. Where do you see things moving now?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been true, and I don't think the trend is going to stop, is the proliferation of the different standards and regulatory requirements that we're confronted with as security leaders. And I wish I could say that there's a harmonization project on the horizon that's going to have one standard to rule them all. But not only in security, but other parts of technology, we've just seen this not to be true. I mean, you can look at the ISO just set of standards for governance. They are immense and broad and cover a lot of different types of unique industries and things from everything from quality assurance to digital security and AI. And that's just one example. That's not even talking about privacy laws that I think we have and are going to have as an example. So you need systems, you need technology to help crack the ability to meet multiple standards at the same time, because it's not going to go away.
And I'd say 9 times out of 10, I'm in a couple Slacks with CISOs. I mentioned I often have conversations with them. They kind of turn to, the challenges that I hear them talking about are more on the compliance and GRC side. Like, a lot of them are CISOs for vendors, so a lot of it is, enabled for us to close a sale. We need a SOC 2, or we have to maintain that SOC 2, or we have to get the work done, for the renewal or something like that. But I would say 9 times out of 10, people getting into the industry might think it's all about threat intelligence and stuff like that up at the top. but it's really not. It's really does anybody have experience with ISO 27K? Does or a CISO has entered a new industry that has different standards that they've never had to deal with before in their career. And at this point, like I've given up on even following all the standards. Just earlier today, I was having a conversation and somebody mentioned JSOC. I have no idea what that is, or
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I assumed it was a standard. It was a company that has a Japanese parent company, so maybe that's something over in Japan. I can't keep up.
I honestly, I couldn't tell you what that one is either, Adrian. And we add about 5 to 9 different standards to our platform per quarter, and we're
Wow.
rapidly adding them. Let's be fair. Like for a long time, CISOs were the expert in what good security was. That's why you hired them, right? And they decided that I'm going to focus on threat intelligence. And
Yeah.
as a community, I think they used very good practices around risk assessment and understanding what the assets are and trying to build a security posture around that. The problem is that not everyone had great practices, and those people that shared data between businesses would go through ransomware issues or large breaches. And now we have a supply chain issue. Now we need to be able to assess these companies and their security practices, and it's almost impossible to assess if you don't have a standardization between the practices. And that is, I think, literally why we see these types of standards come out and them get more specific, and communities like an industry community get invested in it being the right way to work.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit. Over the years, I have seen a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of crosswalking spreadsheets, that kind of aim to take HIPAA and PCI, NIST, all these different things, and in my eyes, just cross. Just thinking about these spreadsheets, right? And a lot of it, it kind of aligned, but not really. Like I was a PCI QSA at one point in my past, and dealt with PCI. I came up through a large payment processor, so I dealt with payment standards for a good portion of my career, especially in the enterprise side. And and yeah, I mean, looking at the requirement and looking at it from the assessor's eyes, like a lot of times those mappings kind of fall apart. So maybe let's dive into that a little bit. You're saying you're adding 5 to 9 new standards every quarter. How realistic is it to have these crosswalking spreadsheets, and using those for guidance here?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's a really classic initial solution to the problem of multi-standard management. StrikeGraph does not crosswalk standard to standard. That's not our modality, and it's actually for a very specific reason. Standards management has been an issue in other industries. Actually, security is a little new to the challenge here. And the industry in the United States that especially went through it the first, I believe, is the education industry for grade school in the United States. And I used to do a lot of computer science work in enterprise education. We would take 50 state standards that have 12 different grade levels with 8 different subject areas and need to map everything from student activity to lesson plans to textbook chapters against those standards. And one of the things that's important to understand is that how high are the stakes when you go through a measurement, assessment, or audit? And in both education, the stakes are high. A child could pass or miss a grade. And in security, the stakes are high. If we fail our audit, there could be revenue impact to us. We tried and tested this concept that I can take one standard and crosswalk it across multiple standards. But the problem is that with every node that you leap, just like a network diagram, the precision of the alignment between what you do and that particular standard drops dramatically. So the horror story, and we had a group come to us recently, is that they went into a TSAX audit, which is a third-party automotive supplier security audit. If you want to be a vendor for BMW, you'll likely be asked for a TSAX audit. And their consultant really knew ISO 27001 and had heard that TSAX and ISO were the same thing. When they went into TSAC's audit, the auditor said, hey, you're going to fail your TSAC's audit, but it's a great ISO 27001 practice. And so it's that level of precision that I think, look, as an industry, and some of this is me bringing my computer science background, we need to be careful because you need to lock your control operation to that part of the standard that you meet, not say, because I hit SOC 2 here, I'm going to be GDPR compliant over there.
Right. So almost like a game of telephone, or, re-recording something using a lossy algorithm, over time, it just degrades to the point to where you've missed the point of the original requirement, by the time you get too far away. Yeah.
It's certainly appealing. I see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They do crib off each other when they write these standards. We can see that as well. But I think when you get into audit, it's just too high stakes to not have that direct relationship.
Yeah. I have seen standards that were directly copied and pasted from other standards. There was a credit industry standard from Experian, I think it was, that was a literal copy and paste from PCI 1.1, and they did a find replace on certain words. Like it was that ripped off. And the trouble was they never went past PCI 1.1. So by the time PCI was at 3.0, you still had this Experian audit that was based on 1.1 that had never been updated. I want to say it was Experian. I might have gotten some of those things wrong, but it was really bizarre because at first it made sense for PCI QSAs to also do those audits, and then it got really frustrating, because you had to take your brain back 8 years or something like that to you don't have to do this. You're still in the Stone Ages. You're still in 2007.
I think that the trick for CISOs here is actually to help them is actually to focus on what their security posture is, right? Like let's go back to what risks you're trying to mitigate, what you believe are the really important assets to protect. Let's define that particular control matrix, but then you need a solution that can essentially say, from my security posture, can you tell me directly into something like high trust, HIPAA, FDA CFR approval, I'm doing against those particular standards.
But to continue my, I guess my audio fidelity analogy here, you have found a lossless way to do this. It sounds like.
Yeah, I love this concept of a control. So one of the things we do, I say this, the language never helps us sometimes in security. I've been navigating this now for a little bit, but I realize that a lot of standards call the expectations that they write controls. But I tell my customers all the time, hey, you need to think about a control as a security process, habit, procedure, or operation that you're going to own. What are your controls? And so if the control is something around, for example, administrator access, that's really, the idea that you're going to use privileged access and least privileges, that's the philosophy, but the control operation is yours to own. But we know that that particular control that you've decided to operate meets a privileged access requirement in ISO 27001. And so we can map that directly to there. The idea is to have every standard be able to reach into your security posture and vice versa. And then you get that level of precision that I've looked at it, my control hits this standard in this spot.
And then one of the, I don't know if this is easy to handle or not, one of the things I find interesting about these is, like SOC 2 and ISO 27000, the organization that's chosen, or maybe they're forced into, something that they need to do. They kind of pick and choose. Whereas, again, my background, the standard I'm most familiar with is PCI, which is 100% pass or fail and very prescriptive. So you get zero choose what you do and don't do with that one. So does that throw in some complexity there?
Absolutely. I once talked to a certified public accountant that did SOC 2 audits that told me, hey, Justin, you can drive a truck through a SOC 2 audit. And it's true because it's very, very loosely defined standard. Now, why would the AICPA write up the standard in that way? Because they want it to operate in a very horizontal way so that any business could go and achieve the outcome. Whereas PCI DSS is a little more focused on that credit card processing, the type of data you're using. And we can look at other standards, moving through the NIST framework, like a FedRAMP or a CMMC, which we support. And those are going to be more prescriptive. And I remember the most prescriptive, you probably did this too, like the OWASP checklist for a server, like exactly what I needed to do in the configuration was there in front of me. So that makes it tough, because in SOC 2, the standard might say, hey, you need to prove to us that you keep data private over transmission. But it's not going to ask you for a specific TLS certificate version, right? That's a decision you as a CISO make about the implementation. And look, in some ways, that's part of my mission, is to actually give CISOs back control over that security posture while also achieving these compliance outcomes.
Yeah, those lovely pieces that refer you to industry best practice, where oftentimes the QSA or the auditor gets to, which is part of the dangerous part, slippery slope there. I've seen some make up requirements on the spot, or decide that it needs to be. I often got hired in after another auditor got fired, and in one case, they told them they didn't have enough security awareness posters, that they need to like double the amount of security awareness posters slapped up in the hallways. And they brought me in. I was like, it's fine, whatever, like
I can't think of any standard that dictates the percentage of walls that need to be covered with security awareness
for every
training
20
information. Yeah.
I mean, who's to say? Maybe that was their biggest problem.
Yeah. That's why that breach happened.
Yeah, that's why that guy was fired.
Went for a poster every 30 feet instead of every 20 feet. Absolutely. Yeah. So I would think that, kind of moving on to, I guess it's kind of a different topic, might be a continuation of the last one. It seems impossible to not talk about generative AI in every interview that I do. And to some extent, I try to actively avoid it. But here, I think this is one of those industries, one of those areas where it seems like it could help so much, because so much of it is just text, is just grokking human language and giving you some understanding, some output. How much can realistically the particularly generative AI help with these kinds of problems?
Yeah. Well, I think there are the fairly obvious use cases, but also there's danger in them. So, Adrian, I've been playing with statistical analysis since we called it algorithmic programming, and probably like you, I see the new progress in natural language processing as great forward momentum and what it can do, but also I think we're still feeling out what the right feature set is. To me, a lot of it seems a little like parlor tricks lately, and we want to find those really, I think, enterprise use cases for what these tools can do. And they're there. There's a lot of them, and great product teams are going to explore them. One of the areas I think that is the easy use case is like policy generation, or trying to summarize large concepts, like what does zero trust mean, or how might I roll it out, or how can I create effective processes for it. I do use some of those tools just as almost like a thought partner sometimes, and really I'm querying the internet and saying, what is it most said about this? We are utilizing generative AI to help in security questionnaire answering and self-assessment. I think that's been pretty effective for us, and we like it. And I think data science broadly, as I look towards the future, whether it's a generative AI model or a Bayesian analysis of a tabular data set, is that internal audit functions are going to start to be replaced with some AI-driven assessment methodologies. And certainly we have been studying that. We've been essentially doing audit practices like internal audit to understand what is required to effectively perform that work, and then trying to find technology tools to make it more accurate and more efficient. And that's That's a critical aspect, Adrian. As much as we use these AI tools, if you don't know how much precision you're giving up in adopting them, you are in danger. But if we can implement them in such a way that the testing and audits are more accurate and happen more quickly, then I'm very comfortable rolling it out.
Yeah, and it's maybe it's not even doing work for you. I'm thinking like explain PCI requirement 6.6 like I'm 10 years old, right? Like sometimes just getting through that language can be difficult. And at the same time, like I worry about using these technologies for that because I don't know if they still produce it, but there used to be a navigating PCI document that was just all about how to interpret it correctly. So you had to understand how they were using this term, like this term traditionally, like maybe even in another adjacent standard, they use that term to mean something completely different. So if you haven't been just completely immersed in this world, you might not know that that verb or that term has a specific meaning. So I do kind of worry about that a little bit, and just to play around with it, I just asked ChatGPT to explain PCI requirement 6.6, just to see how it would do. It was something I hadn't tested out before.
Well, and I think the challenge for me in this is my question is why. If you have expert human written document that isn't hallucinating about how effectively to roll out PCI DSS, what are you really gaining by refiltering that? And let's be fair, these models are trained on the internet at large and effective repeated communication. The fact that someone responded to something that someone said. So they're going to do their best not to optimize on honesty or truthfulness or the factuality or any understanding literally of the content, more so that this new sentence and the prior sentence seem to fit together in a sequence that someone would comprehend or respond to as if it was a valid source of information.
By how much do you think that raises the risk of companies failing these audits? Because, like Adrian, I like to play around and ask questions. And I find out more and more these really not great quirks about using these LLMs. And I'm in product marketing, right? So there's a lot less danger there. Of course, I'm not going to go out and say something wrong on purpose. But when it comes to audits, when it comes to compliance, this could quite literally cost a company millions of dollars. So how much do you think the risk is there? Do you think people are aware yet? Or are we still in that sort of honeymoon phase where it's like, well, hey, I could just, put these standards into my ChatGPT and it gets 3 paragraphs and, audit simplified.
Yeah, I think you really qualify it well, Katie, which is you really need to think about what risk is posed by using this particular model. Actually, that's true in any of these use cases, but compliance is a great one. If I'm doing a product marketing, like I might use it to help me come up with some titles for a particular thought piece that I'm writing. But I'm the expert on the other side. I filter what I think is a good fit. But if I'm not the expert and I'm asking about something that's very high stakes, high risk, if I fail this audit, it could be, well, I could lose business. I will literally lose business. Then I think it's very dangerous without an expert on the other side interpreting the information you receive from the model.
Yeah, it's a little scary because especially if you use it day in, day out, you're training it on information that's almost like, I think, Adrian, you said it on this interview, might have been last interview though, the telephone effect, the snowball effect, where you're training it on things that are just changing slightly enough. And again, I've done it, I've tested it, I can't write using it because of that. And I still have to go in, but I think it's very dangerous that people aren't quite aware of what it can do. Hopefully in security, hopefully in audit they are, but I'm not convinced that people are taking that half a second to actually say, ooh, I have to pressure test this. And the best thing that I do is I take 2 or 3 LLMs and I ask the same question and just see how much variance I get. It's really fun or scary.
That's a great model, Katie, or I shouldn't say that because we'll mix up our terms here. That's a great way of thinking about it, Katie. Some of the folks that deal with models and AI in the highest stakes situation look to multiple models to interpret the future. I've seen it a lot in, this is going to sound like a weird ancillary, but offshore sailboat racing. You need to know what the weather and currents are going to do to be successful. And some models predict certain weather and current in better places than others. And the navigator interprets the model predictions and the differences between them for the optimum route at the end of the day.
Yeah, potentially life and death in some of those cases as well.
Yeah, high stakes. That's right. Yeah.
Just talking about Katie was kind of highlighting the cases where, you could potentially lose business, lose millions of dollars, but I feel like there's another end of the market where, unfortunately, I've lost large amounts of my time on this earth to filling out or responding to security questionnaires. Immediately when I saw generative AI, that was one of the use cases that popped into my head. Like, nobody really looks at these or reads them anyway. Like, yes, like if I've got 7 SIG lights to fill out today and they all ask pretty much the same questions, different ways, literally what a lot of vendors are doing is just having an intern or somebody from sales go through like a master list of how they've answered questions in the past and saying, yeah, this sounds pretty close, copy, paste. It sounds like something like this could take over. But then, of course, the bigger question is, should we be doing that at all anyway, since nobody's really doing this except to say that they did something, to use it as some evidence of due diligence before a purchase?
Yeah, I'll start with your big question. And Adrian, I'm an ex-chief technology officer. I have nightmares about SIG-like questionnaires, actually. I've answered a whole lot of them in my career. I think we started in third-party risk with the self-assessment, and that's why I filled out a bunch of them. And that was not enough trust to share data, and I understand why, because there's no third-party rigor to that assessment. Then we started seeing a lot of ask for everything from SOC 2 to ISO 27001, but some marketplaces had already moved on, like PCI DSS. They're like, the fraud potential is so high that third parties who we approve are the only ones that can perform these types of assessments or audits. And that's where we're seeing the industry go to. The sad thing is that a lot of the procurement teams are asking for the audit, but not let go of the security questionnaire. And I think they could, right? Because the audit asks almost the same set of questions. It is third-party analyzed and validated. And it's a more accurate assessment and more valid assessment. Now, to your point about generative AI being helpful, this is an area where we've been doing a lot of innovation. In our platform, we have a lot of information about the security posture that a company operates, and also the evidence of that security operation. And so we have a security assistant, and you can ask it a question like, what's our required password length? And it will look through all of that data about the security posture and compose what it thinks the answer is. But importantly, it tells you where it sourced the information. And I think that's critical for almost all this generative AI stuff, because I want somebody to be able to say, oh yeah, it came from my acceptable use policy. That's where I know that that's the right material.
So it sounds like, as we wrap up here, the answer to a lot of this is there really are better ways of doing this. It sounds like the industry is ready for us to kind of move on and let some things die. Like, I've heard a lot of people saying, okay, like people are afraid to get rid of it completely. Go down to 20 questions, instead of 500 or 200 or something like that.
Your unique ones, maybe. Yeah, your unique concerns would be that 20 questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, maybe we're just kind of in this awkward middle stage of being scared to admit that, maybe there's better ways of establishing trust here. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think they'll get there. I think, let's be fair, the procurement teams are they just need to get a lot of vendors through the pipeline for everyone that wants to get a vendor adoption to happen. That's their priority. Yeah. They need to do that in the most efficient way that they can, but with rigor. And so, and of course, you're a little reticent to let go of something that you've designed and put in place. I know that as an engineer. There's many features I could have killed. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great. Justin, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
That's deeply my pleasure. Thank you very much.
And stick around. When we come back, we'll have Ayman El-Sawa with us, and we're going to do the Enterprise Security News.